Hi, I'm Randy Robison on Life Today TV with we got a lot of great guests, but it's hard not to say Jefferson's one of my favorites because it's fun just hanging out and talking to him. Jefferson Bethke has got a new book called It's Not What You Think, and I'm sure the book is not what you think because Jefferson's unpredictable.
The title's the hardest thing because when people say, what's the title of my new book, I say, it's not what you think.
And they're like, okay, what is it?
Exactly. I didn't think that through.
No, it's a great game.
Yeah.
Like who's on first, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what's new in your life? We'll talk about the book in a minute. What's going on with you?
Well, yeah, I was just telling you a few minutes ago. So we moved to Hawaii. That was not a random move. My wife used to live there, work there, and we wanted to raise a family there. It was really a communal thing. The community my wife was a part of there.
Sure. Whatever excuse you have to come up with, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. No, my wife really fell in love with the church community there, and we just wanted to raise a family there. But still doing the same stuff there, so writing, YouTube, podcast, kind of anything creative, internet-based.
You can do, with technology, you can do it from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's what I keep telling them here.
I know, that's right. Here's what's crazy about Hawaii. Hawaii has more ocean between it and the next landmass than anywhere else in the world. So technically, I'm more in the middle of nowhere than you could ever be. Yeah, and I can still from there I can still do what I do.
And how's the internet access to speed?
It's actually pretty terrible.
Is it pretty bad?
Yeah, it was coming from Seattle. I was actually, it was like they advertise fastest internet on Maui, and it's like 5 up, 5 down, or something like that.
Can you
like,
watch Netflix?
Barely. It's the buffer every 10 minutes. So yeah, first world problems, but it's still not the best.
But it's Hawaii.
Exactly.
Fair trade-off.
Exactly.
So the book, you got a new book, yeah?
Yeah.
And it's out now. So
Yep.
What's it about? So
this one more than Jesus' Great Religion's first book. That one was really heavy memoir, heavy biographical, kind of my own journey of learning coming to that understanding of grace, which really transformed my life. This one I would almost frame as like a big idea book. This one I try to do a lot more. I try to go after a lot more. It was harder to write, a lot more study. And what I mean by that is this one's trying to not reframe Christianity, because it's been the same, and it's that's what Christianity is. It's just the truth about Jesus and orthodoxy, but try to point the parts where I think we've added to the orthodoxy or maybe gotten off base.
Like.
And so, each chapter is a different topic that specifically had a chargedness to it in a first century Jewish context. So first one is story. Story's huge to Jewish people. Second chapter is temple. There's one on kingdom and Sabbath and the table. Like there's even the table, right? Like that. To a first century person, that was actually deeply symbolic of relationship. That's why Jesus got most provoked or most condemned for eating with people. Like that just doesn't even really fit in our worldview, because it's like that doesn't mean what it means then.
Right.
To sit down and eat with someone. So I really kind of talk about that. And it was really a personal study book where I was coming across these truths on the depth of the Sabbath, the depth of what kingdom meant, the depth of the table, that really, really transformed my life and made kind of my life more full with my wife, Alyssa, and our little girl. And so that's what it kind of flowed out of. Mm-hmm.
And what do you hope the reader gets out of it? Just some of the depth you've got? Or?
Yeah, so if I can bullseye on one thing in the book, the one theme I keep coming back to is this word intimacy, that a lot of times our Christianity is very much anti-intimate in the sense of it's not even relational. It's very much about facts. It's about it's about even our salvation methods are like that, right? Like it's a piece of paper and it's check that you believe these 4 things and then you're saved, right?
Right.
When no one a marriage would be an example of something that's intimate, right? Relationally, meaning each other, you're friends and all that stuff. So who would ever want to get married that way? Right? Who would ever want to be well, check the box, check the box that you met this day, okay, you're good, you're married. No, a marriage is intimate. There's life and beauty and joy and laughter and all these things, right? It's a person on the other side. And I think we've lost that. And so that's what I come back to in every chapter is that God wants to know his creation. He wants to know his people. And he's actually on a mission to come down to us. I think a lot of times we think it's about leaving, when the whole narrative of Scripture, Genesis to Revelation, is a narrative of descent, I like to say, where it's God, each act of the play, coming closer and closer to his people. And that just really makes it so much more vibrant. It makes you more excited, because this is, it's like this drama's playing out rather than just take the test.
Yeah.
And for me personally, that's been so life-giving.
Yeah, one thing you talked about on the broadcast show that I like is the idea of the kingdom of heaven is at hand, in a sense, because most people think of heaven as later, as out there, is almost not real in a sense.
Totally.
But that's the opposite of what Jesus was trying to communicate of it's here.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to see because we see the imperfection of the world and we think, how can heaven be here? This can't be right.
Totally. It's the way I like to think about it, and it's easier to draw this than to say this, but I think most people can catch it. It's kind of like a Venn diagram, right? Where the Venn diagram is the two circles with one overlap, with the little overlap in the middle. And I would say, one circle's heaven, one circle's earth. That's the way Scripture talks about heaven and earth. They're two things, but always like kind of paired. It's like a marriage, right? Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's just the way it says it. It's just like this package. But because of sin, those circles were on top of each other completely. It was a marriage. Heaven and earth were just fully married in their dimension. But then sin happens, rips the two circles apart, but God, in his graciousness, never let them fully separate. And so that place in the middle where even after Genesis 3, that heaven and earth are still connected is the temple in the Old Testament, right? And that's actually, if you were to ask an Israelite what heaven was or what the temple was, they probably would have defined it like that. And I've even heard theologians say that the temple was kind of the place where heaven and earth met.
It's where God's presence was.
Exactly. It's where his dimension invaded our dimension. So heaven and earth combining. So the temple is the only place that was happening. But then the story continues, and then we see Jesus, right? The Word became flesh and dwelt among us, or templed among us. So now Jesus is that middle space, but the cool part about Jesus is he has legs, right? So he can move, he can go on the offensive. So now, because he's actually in motion, those circles are actually slowly but surely going more together, right? And the circle in the middle gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so yes, there's parts where it's like, man, there's destruction and hell-like places on earth and all these different things, but those are places outside that camp, outside that sphere. And so our job, or the job that Jesus is doing, that he tasks us with, is to continue to go out into earth and infect earth with heaven, right? Like, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And that becomes really personal too, by the way, that prayer, if you replace your city, right? So like, or your place. So for me, we live in Maui now, so it'd be like, on Maui as it is in heaven, or, which some people would say Maui is heaven, but right. Or like a Seattle or New York. So in Seattle as it is in heaven, in New York as it is in heaven. If that's a prayer that the people of God prayed all over the world, I think the world would look a lot different. And it would kind of let us see how much responsibility we have here to do that task.
Guarantee. As I've traveled overseas and some, because when you work for a mission organization, you don't get to go to Maui.
Hey, there's brokenness everywhere.
You get to go to Cambodia. Was my last trip, right? The number one thing, yes, there are natural disasters, acts of God, if you will, as we blame him for. But the place where there's the most suffering, I haven't found a place where it isn't primarily or exclusively because of human corruption.
Totally. And that's, again, something I talk about a little bit in the book, I think, too, where people kind of blame God at those points rather than, no. That's actually what happens when the brokenness that we chose to do by being our own gods, our own kings, plays out. Like, that's the fruit of kind of, when Jesus, when Acts says Jesus is Lord, that's the answer to those hellish places, because those hellish places are when we say we're Lord, when we're King. And so we aren't like Jesus, in our sin, where we, his way was sacrificial and loving, and, he was the greatest but came under and served and actually died for us. That's the opposite, or the antithesis of those places where when we try to take the throne, we try to take the thing, and it just reaps corruption, destruction, pain, all that stuff.
So you're saying that we can be the ones that usher in God's kingdom here on earth to bring those circles more in line.
Yeah.
And experience.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is us then submitting to his reign and rule, right? So, and again, some people cringe at that because we don't want to submit to anyone in 21st century Western America, right? Like, we don't want to submit, we don't like authority. But again, the question is not, it's not we don't like authority, but the question we have to ask is, whose authority is it? And no one can be more trusted than God himself, who offered himself for us, right? So it's not this lordship over, it's not this, I'm going to yank you by the chain. It's actually the opposite. He's the only thing. You look at alcohol, you look at sexuality, you look at other false gods, all of them actually demand of you. They say, you're going to be this, and they kind of pull you along. Usually and that's how you get addiction, right? You can't help it. But Jesus is the only one where, rather than forcing us or coercing us to do something, he actually compels us or woos us by his love. So he's the only one that says, I'm going to go first, I'm going to act, I'm going to love, and that's going to be such a beautiful, strong thing that I'm not going to have to force you. You're going to see and say, I want that. And when you see that, that's that act of coming under his lordship, of putting your sexuality, your finances, your academics if you're in school, athletics if you're playing sports, putting that under his reign and rule. And when you ask yourself, how do I make what's true of heaven here on earth in my finances, in my marriage, in my parenting, that's when you start to have those things that then heaven starts to kind of come in and spread out, which is exactly what he wanted us to do.
And you've tried this.
Huh?
And you've tried this in many areas.
Well,
Yes?
I would say, yeah.
Yes?
I think the one thing that's cool about it is it makes your whole life matter. I think again, it doesn't privatize certain parts of your life, but no, how I deal with my money is an opportunity to either show what it looks like since Genesis 3 of the corruption and the curse, or what it looks like when God is in control, right? What does it look like when he is reigning and ruling, and then that can be a beautiful witness to people. So yeah, you can take that with every aspect of your life, and you have the opportunity to do one or the other.
And by saying that, I'm simply saying that you've experienced it in your own life to see the blessings and how it
Totally.
works. So
Yeah.
it's not just theory.
No,
This
totally.
is-
Yeah, and I
this
think
stuff
it's a Jewish word or Hebrew word, shalom, but the Jewish people use it specifically even in the beginning of the garden and stuff like that, where when God created everything, it was shalom, meaning it was kind of like put together right. Everything was at peace. Everything was kind of firing in all cylinders. That was kind of almost like a dance, right? And then the curse happened, and it kind of broke that dance, and just everything is chaos, right? That was the word they used for kind of evil. And so that lordship and kingship issue, when you start to see it and really submit to it, then everything kind of, I've had that feeling of everything getting put back in that shalom, of the rightness, or the dance kind of, oh, this is how it's supposed to work, and it just feels right.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where the joy and life and beauty comes from.
Yeah. Cool stuff. People can get the book where?
Anywhere they want, mobile phone, it'll be on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the Christian stores, anyway. Basically, if they Google it or if they go to any site they want to buy a book, it should be
I've
there.
already Googled it, actually, and it is out there. So,
Yep.
And they can find you at?
JeffBethke.com or Jefferson Bethke for Twitter.
Okay. Very good.
Yep.
Very good. Check it out. Check him out. Great stuff. I've enjoyed talking to Jeff for years, so I would encourage you to check him out online if you haven't already. And also check him out when he's on Life Today TV, the broadcast show. You can see that at lifetoday.org. Thanks for coming, man. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to come visit you next.
Yeah.